Hi, Francoise. Welcome back to our recordings of these little dialogues that we've been doing in reflecting with each other on our Thinking with the Heart in Mind program, which we're bringing back in 2025, an extended version of it. And one of the topics that we still needed to spend some time reflecting on together so that we could also share this with people who are prospectively interested in participating in the program is the question, what do you think participants in this program can expect from taking part in it? And I'd love to know what your first and freshest thoughts are about that question at the moment. What do you think people can expect from doing this?
Thanks, Trisha. It's good to be here again with you and to be in dialogue around thinking with the heart in mind, which at the outset, offers for people a scaffolding or a framework in which people can learn to generate their finest independent thinking and also learn and develop their innate capacities for self-regulation, self-awareness, and self-compassion. But I think the sum is greater than its parts, actually. And it's when those parts come together, when you actually have taken the work of the thinking environment and you've woven into it contemplative science, the practices and insights that emerge from secular practices like mindfulness and compassion-based practice, and various somatic practices around self-regulating and befriending the nervous system, that something much greater than a series of individual skills or capacities emerges. And I was actually thinking about it this week, Trisha, in relationship to, I suppose, some of the absence of what I'm experiencing in public life and in I know it's not the place to go looking for it. Like when you look at the news headlines and political discourse, it's not the place to go looking for it. But I do think that a fair portion of that at some level reflects some of the discontent within societies. And I think there's a yearning and a mourning and a wishing for a greater sense of connection and belonging, and I don't know how you would get to a greater sense of connection and belonging between groups, especially different groups who don't always see eye to eye, who might stand on each other's toes sometimes, or do much worse than stand on each other's toes. If you aren't building within yourself this very intimate and dynamic capacity to befriend yourself and to liberate yourself. And so I think those, in some ways, are the intended outcomes of our program, the sense of befriending and liberating. And I think the promise of that is not just for the individual. I think it's for groups at large, groups writ large, how we flow into public spaces and how we show up in our places of work or our home, and the knock-on impact that might have if we show up in ways that encourage connection and belonging. What do you think?
Beautiful. I loved listening to everything that you said there. Yeah, I mean, added to the longing aspect of what you were referring to, I've noticed in a lot of narratives that I'm listening to, groups that I'm on, in response to, as you said, the public space and what's happening in the public space in the world. And I mean, the public space is so global these days, isn't it? You know, it's like I feel as if my life on a daily basis, because of some of the groups that I'm on, is taking place in America. Do you know what I mean? It's like my life is taking place in America. I mean, it's not really. I know it's not really, but it can feel like it is, you know, things that really have nothing at all to do with me at one level are really kind of not impinging, I wouldn't say impinging, but have the potential to impinge on my daily experience if I don't figure out ways of remaining, as you were saying, self-regulated around them. And I think one of the big longings that I'm hearing is the longing for more humanity and more dignity and more manners in some way is a word that comes to mind. Just this capacity for, as you were saying, for us to be able to carry ourselves in our lives in a way that um, leaves behind that experience for people, an experience of having been dignified and of having been treated respectfully and with care, you know, and attention. So, yeah, I do think that, you know, what I think people can expect from being a participant in thinking with the heart in mind, I go very much to my own experience of having been a participant in it, albeit having been a facilitator as well, because I think because we're co-facilitating, in some ways we get to be participants in our own program because we're not always the one holding the lead facilitator role. And so sometimes we almost kind of get a little bit of an opportunity when you're facilitating. I really do get an opportunity to be a bit of a participant as well. And, you know, because this is material that you and I have been working on together for quite some time now, and then explicitly in the delivery of it last year. And then again, we've spent quite a bit of time already this year working on the redesign of it and extending it. I think that one of the things I have gained from it is growing myself up. And I mean that in both a kind of literal sense and also in a metaphorical sense as well, like growing myself up into someone who is able to be more upright, more upstanding in the way in which I live my life, and at the same time more grown up as well, just literally more adult. Because I think self-regulation, I noticed that self-regulation is it is an ages and stages type of a thing with us human beings, I think. And you know that you don't expect self-regulation from a 3-year-old in the way that you expect it from a 33-year-old or the way you expect it from a 63-year-old, which is what I am now, soon to be 64. And yet you often do get a 3-year-old version of self-regulation in 64-year-olds. So, you know, and we can get those attacks at any moment, can't we, where our 3-year-old raises his or her head. But I definitely, you know, I love the 3 human capacities that we work with a lot, of self-regulation, self-awareness, and self-compassion. I mean, I think they are life-saving. And the fact that they are woven together with the 10 components of a thinking environment, which, as you and I both know, is this extraordinarily, you know, far-reaching, idealistic in many ways, intention to be in life in a way that creates the conditions for other people to be at their best when they're around us, you know. So it's a very giving, very you know, setting aside of oneself for the benefit of another. But so I think the weaving together of both of those things, because with self-compassion, self-awareness, and self-regulation, you're really putting yourself at the center of your attention. And then with the 10 components of the thinking environment, you're putting the other at the center of your attention. So the fact that we're weaving those two together into this real kind of like mini university program, like very mini, but still, you know, it's like it feels far reaching for me what comes out of it for people. And I think, to go back to where I started, I think it's hugely dignifying and very, very humanizing for people when they do it. And it gives people a sense of hope and self-confidence in a very, very turbulent world. What do you think?
Mm. I love so much of what you're saying, and it sparks so very much thinking. I think really just to echo that kind of vision that you're offering of the self and the other, and then just to add to that the layer of that we attend to the self in the service of the other, and we attend to the other in the service of the self. So it really has this reciprocal dynamism to it, which is at the essence of our program, this sense of interdependence. And in the context of our interdependent lives, which, as you say, are very global. I mean, you know, um, so much of what's happening everywhere feels like it's happening here too. And what a radical and beautiful thing it would be if all our lives were more dignified, because of the way we treated ourselves and the way we were treated by others. And when you were thinking a little bit about how you've experienced being a facilitator, I was reminded too of the ways in which I've experienced being a, a practitioner, actually, of both bodies of work and the impact of practice in my own life. And which is hard to imagine without, to be truly honest. I can't really imagine my life without my practices of the thinking environment and mindfulness and self-compassion. And in fact, as you know, I did have a little bit of a mortality scare recently when I got a breast cancer diagnosis. And before I had the diagnosis, and I learned that my breast cancer was very treatable, very lucky that it was very treatable. And I did have this kind of hiatus where I knew they'd been watching this tumor for a very long time, but I didn't know, what stage it was. And so, of course, the negativity bias runs off to the worst possible scenario. And there I was at stage 4 cancer, and, possibly saying goodbye to my kids in the next few months, and my husband and my friends. And I had such a radical moment of being able to catch my mind, move off into that scenario, and to know it as just one potential, and not necessarily my potential, just my thinking in that moment. But what was incredibly powerful for me was the tenderness that I was able to meet myself with. This awareness of the intensity of my suffering in that moment brought this really deep tenderness to me. And I had this really profound experience. I mean, I think I've been battling with this quite a bit. I'm in the middle of my life and been doing quite a bit of that middle of your life reflection of like, where am I going and what have I done? And I had this really profound experience of dignifying actually, I wouldn't even say my life, or just this sense of life dignified in big capital letters, big L, big D, life dignified. And I was really struck by your thinking about the potential of that in all its manifestations, the individual life, the life of others, but also the life of our living planet. And I got quite excited. I thought, wow, there may even be outcomes we couldn't have possibly imagined. And I think in some ways that's very, very true. When I started a lot of these practices, there was no ways I could have foreseen into the promise and the potential that they brought into my life. And so I think I really want to surface that there's a a promise and potential that you can only discover if you're willing to step into the journey of self-discovery. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and also that it's kind of like a gift that keeps on giving. I think there's something which is aligned with, I think, what you're saying of you're going to get what you get from doing the course itself. And I can remember very clearly from the participants that did it last year that there was this sense of an oasis, that it was such an oasis, and that people went away with such you know, strengthened hope, strengthened courage, strengthened sense of resource, and a very, like, people had touched in with a real lived experience of, yes, this is it. This is possible. It's possible, and this is how I want it to be in my life. This is the way I want to be towards myself. This is the way I want to be towards others. And you know, one of the things that I love about the program, both from the thinking environment perspective and also from the contemplative practice perspective, is, as you said, the practices, and that there are these very practical practices. And I know for a fact that one of last year's participants has now got a daily practice that she didn't have prior to coming on the program, and she's sustained it, you know, and she's kept it going, and she didn't know that that was possible for herself before she did the program. So, and that's also been my experience of the work that I originally did with you back in 2018, that it's now a daily practice that I've been able to sustain for 8 years now, which is really amazing. So yeah, I love the practical applicability of it, and also the far-reaching ripple effects of that in ways that you can only find out if you do it. Is there anything more that you want to add before we close on this question of what people can expect from participating in Thinking with the Heart in Mind?
I think just really to emphasize that in addition to the far-reaching and the practicals, that you alluded to this integration, Tricia, and that's really what we're hoping is happening here, is that you working through this program in ways that shift, change, move certain habits or ways of being in a direction towards greater compassion, towards greater regulation and resilience, and towards greater self-awareness. And it's very hard to quantify the outcome of any of that, except to know on a very quantifiable level that you'll be given practices that you can do daily to keep the journey alive, way beyond what we'll do with you in the time that we're together. So yeah, we hope that that's enticing and enlivening, and that you would reach out if any of this sounds like something you're interested in.
Yeah. And I'm
So,
really looking forward to the people for whom it will be interesting. I'm really looking forward to meeting them and working with them. Yeah.
absolutely. Can't wait. So please do reach out. And you're welcome to visit Trisha's website or mine. The links will be along with this video, and you can find out more about the program at either of our websites and sign up specifically at the sign up link that we'll offer too. So thanks very much, Trisha. It's been wonderful to think with you, and thank you to everyone who's been listening.
Thank you too.